Associated Credit Union's Prosper checking account earns more than 40 times the interest rate paid on the average checking account nationwide. That's more cha-ching in your checking account each month. With no minimum balance or monthly maintenance fee, this is the perfect checking account for adding more cha-ching each month. Associated Credit Union is here to help you live, bank, grow, and cha-ching. Certain terms and conditions apply. Learn more at acuonline.org/prosper checking. Federally insured by NCUA.
This is an Extra 106.3 podcast. To hear more live and local content like this, tune into 106.3 FM or download the Extra 106.3 app. Extra 106.3 and a Second Chance Bail Bonds are here to back your blue. Back Your Blue highlights special initiatives, criminal justice programs, and community events aimed at keeping our communities safer. Join a Second Chance Bail Bond CEO Daniel Matalon and host Tug Coward to learn some good news about and from the law enforcement and justice communities. Now it's time to Back Your Blue on Extra 106.3 FM and the Extra 106.3 app.
Welcome to Back Your Blue here on Extra 106.3 with Daniel Matalon. He is the CEO. And I'm telling you, he is always lining up guests for our show with a Second Chance Bail Bonds and a Second Chance Monitoring. Today, you've done another good job, buddy. Nice work. How you been?
Good. How you been?
Man, I am trying to just keep it between the ditches the best I can. Today, we've got Officer Jonnie Moeller-Reed, joined Marietta Police Department in 2001 as a uniformed patrol officer, 10 years as a criminal investigator, police academy instructor, class coordinator before moving to community outreach, been a senior training officer, and hostage crisis response negotiator. Wow. I got to tell you, that seems stressful. That seems like in the moment that would be one that I think I would have to opt out of. I don't think I'd have the ability to pull it off. Is it as unnerving and frightening and intimidating as it sounds?
It is.
Yeah, I figured so. I mean, I love your honesty. I tell you, it sounds like something that nobody would volunteer for, yet you have.
No one in their right mind.
Well,
anyway,
exactly.
Right?
That's right. Absolutely. That's right. But you did it and were successful at it, and it's people like you that make our community better. So thank you for being so brave and not being afraid to take on a monumental task that seemingly has split-second decisions on life or death at times, right?
It can.
Yeah,
it can.
Goodness.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it can be a lot. It can be a lot.
I'm sure that it can. Right now, currently serving as a senior police officer in the Police Wellness Officer and Peer Support Coordinator. Originally from Cincinnati, married, 4 dogs, a cat, and does it say a Russian tortoise?
Russian tortoise.
Where do you get a Russian tortoise?
Well, actually, mine came from one of our retired judges who felt like I needed an office pet.
Oh, yes, of course.
So
is it like a slider turtle, or what is that?
He is, no, he's a actual tortoise.
Okay.
And I've had him for like 10 years. He just travels from office to office wherever I move. He goes with
you? He just shows back up? Dude, I love that. That's awesome. But you have a strong love for animals, and that's a big stress reliever along with playing tennis too, huh?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I have become such an animal guy. I mean, I've always loved animals, don't get me wrong, but since my son has graduated high school, moved on to college, is in his sophomore year in college, our focus has just become our dog, and like he is the new child in the house, and he lives it up. This dog lives better than I think. I got to tell you, if my wife, and we've been married 23 years, if she had to choose between me and the dog, I'd be living on the street. I feel certain. There's no doubt in my mind. Jonnie, there's no doubt in my mind I'd be on the street. Now, how would it play out in your house? I don't want to put you on the spot or anything.
I like not to answer that.
Yeah, exactly right. Don't want to incriminate yourself. I love it. Chuck McPhillamy is back with us. You've been on the show before. Marietta Police Department's PIO. What you been up to, man?
Just trying to keep Jonnie in line.
Well, look, I hear
job.
that's a challenge. Yeah, I hear it is quite some challenge that you have, because this is a wild woman, I hear.
So since I was on last, you helped us with some recruiting. We are very proud to say that we are almost full staff. A lot of that, yeah,
let's
exactly.
go.
Awesome. And a lot of that came on the heels of Jonnie putting in a tremendous amount of work while she was in our training unit.
Yeah.
And I'm just honored to be here with her today. It's an exciting time for us as an agency. We are one of the very first that we can find around the nation that has a full-time dedicated officer towards wellness. And I didn't think that would be the case. And the more that, so Jonnie and I joke that we're like work husband, work wife. So if you get that through listening to any of this, we love to torment each other, but huge respect for her. Please don't misunderstand that sarcasm. But when she was taking over the role, I said, well, have you reached out to any other agencies? Because I'm a talker. I'll talk to you in the elevator. Like, I'm sure I have somebody, right? That I must know
somebody will respond.
Right. And she said, Chuck, you'd be surprised. There are very few around the country that have someone dedicated towards this. And just to kind of kick off the thought process here, I came from the private sector, if you've heard our previous podcast. And huge accolades to law enforcement that they do such a good job at finding the right person to be able to carry a badge and a gun. But then historically, we just basically, that's it. Once you're in the door, well, hope you can hold on. And you're going to see things that normal people don't see, and you're going to respond to calls that people wouldn't normally expect to. And then what? And then you're left to try and compartmentalize all of that. And we'll now enter in Jonnie being a full-time person to take over that. So we are very excited that she is our very first ever wellness officer.
That's unbelievable. Congratulations for being selected for the role, for having the expertise that so many people need, and just recognizing there is a need and filling that role. So congratulations, and we appreciate you so much, because we know what our men and women in blue face every day. And we learned that from Chuck when we talked about it, because stuff like that never crosses my mind. And that's a flaw in maybe me, or maybe it's in a lot of people, because you just know that the police are there to do what needs to be done, whatever that is. And that's a wide variety of things. But then when the night is over and the lights are off and you're in, by yourself again, some of that still replays. And we see it a lot, the discussion a lot, when it comes to our men and women in uniform and our military and our brave men and women in uniform that we salute. We recognize that there are some issues and PTSD and things that they deal with after they leave the battlefield. But I don't think 99% of folks consider that when they're talking about the police.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And for a long time, I think we've been in denial. Us as law enforcement professionals, we've been in denial, and always telling people, we've got this, we can handle this, and putting off this facade like we've got everything under control, when behind the scenes we're really falling apart. Our families are falling apart, or high rates of divorce, alcoholism, all of that. We're self-destructing, but we pretend to be, superhuman. And that's part of the battle, is getting officers to understand that, we are human, and we have emotion, and we have all these other things that come along with being human, and getting them to accept that and understand that, the feelings and the things that they're experiencing are valid because you're human. So it's a challenge, because we don't like to admit that we need help or might need a hand here and there, because we're used to just doing it on our own. We're the problem solvers. And so we want to fix our own problems when sometimes it's too big for us to fix ourselves.
I think so, yeah.
And that's where we have to be able to, actually reach out and help one another from experiences that someone else may have had. And so that's why peer support is so important to me, and I'm a huge proponent of peer support, because it's different than talking to a spouse or a friend or anyone else. It's someone that's actually kind of been there and lived it, that can understand and relate to what you might be going through.
Yeah, no, I was going to bring Chuck in just for a second, because anybody that didn't hear our last episode with the public affairs officer at Marietta Police, and the fact that y'all were forward-thinking enough to recognize it, because you talked about how many agencies and police departments don't have this.
Correct.
The fact that you're forward-thinking enough to recognize it, because Jonnie, you said denial. You denied that it even exists. A lot of times that gets done. How was it that y'all figured it out at Marietta Police Department before anybody else seemingly has?
It's an excellent question, and it's tough for me to answer unless you were to look at the bigger picture. Sometimes you have to step back and stop looking at the trees and see the forest. The reality is that Jonnie and I were fortunate enough to join an agency that has been forward-thinking for at least the last 30 years. When you go back through the progression of the individuals that were selected to be the chiefs of police, you'll see a transition from old school policing to now more of a focus on education and what diplomas are hanging on your wall instead of what stuffed trophies that you've hunted or fished. And then you start looking at the number of people that have come through our agency that were selected to be chiefs elsewhere, and you're now somewhere around 15.
Wow.
And that's just unheard of for any agency. So it's not unthinkable then to look at the agency and say, well, how did we become the first to, and fill in the blank? If you go back, and I know this is a weird tangent, but just rapid fire really quick, weapon-mounted lights, we were the first one in the country that was pushing for that. Now it's commonplace. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu a couple of years ago, we were the first to make it mandatory in the nation. And then that became this movement.
Was that a self-defense thing? Yeah.
Brazilian
I just want to
Jiu-Jitsu.
because maybe somebody wouldn't know
Sure.
listening right now and be like, what? Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Well, what's the purpose of that?
So when you start looking at all of the different crap that you put on my body that I wear every day when I'm in full uniform, the goal with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is that I'm never using any of that. That what can I use with my own level of confidence instead of ever drawing any weapon out of my vest?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Or off from my belt. And so then now to look at what's next, and actually one of our majors, Ben Mixon, said to me recently, I should back up maybe 2 years ago, not recently. He said, Chuck, you keep talking about BJJ, but that's already Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We've already done that. What's next?
No, I love it.
He was already asking the question as a lieutenant at the time, what's next?
But I got to tell you, though, 2 years is a blink of an eye, so that is pretty quick, especially
Yes.
when nobody else is recognizing there's even a need.
Correct. And so to her credit, Jonnie is the one that petitioned for this position. She was named Officer of the Year twice within her tenure with us, which is a little unheard of. And one of those times was for her work with peer support and for mental wellness. And then she wrote the proposal when the position didn't exist. So she actually created this position that she was now ultimately selected for.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I know you have great respect, Daniel, for what they do and the forward thinkingness, and I know you implement a lot of that in your own company, a second chance.
Yeah, mental health and wellness is a big thing. Obviously, I had my own struggles early on as a teen into my early 20s. And yeah, I mean, he's right. You don't see it everywhere, which is obviously concerning, but the places where it is being implemented, I mean, we even try to do it within our own business because, I mean, look, people, I mean, it's just life. It's reality, you know. So.
When we come back on Back Your Blue with a second chance bail bonds and a second chance monitoring, Daniel Madelon, my name is Doug. Also on the show today, Officer Jonnie Moeller-Reed, Wellness Officer and Peer Support Coordinator, which is almost unheard of in the police world. We'll talk about more about like the risk factors that are involved in the job. And of course, we have Chuck McPhillamy, Marietta Police Department's PIO, on the show today, and we will be right back on Extra 106.3.
This is Back Your Blue, presented by A Second Chance Bail Bonds, live on Extra 106.3 FM and streaming for free anytime on the Extra 106.3 app.
Welcome back to Back Your Blue with Daniel Madelon of A Second Chance Bail Bonds and A Second Chance Monitoring. Today, we have great guests from Marietta Police Department, the Police Wellness Officer, Jonnie Moeller-Reed, and the PIO there at the Marietta Police Department, and that is Chuck McPhillamy. That is the Public Information Officer, and Chuck's been on the show before. Delighted that you came back. Man, I'm surprised you came back. Sometimes we can't drag people back in here.
I'm a glutton for punishment.
Yeah,
I don't know what to tell you. And somebody
kid.
told me I like to talk. I don't know where they got that from.
Exactly right. No, you do good work, and you've been such an integral part, and it's just an honor to have you back, and we really do appreciate you taking the time. And, Jonnie, you're doing something that most police departments across the country are not doing. Let's talk about the risk factors when it comes to some of the special assignments that go along with the Marietta Police Department, some of the things that you're helping officers navigate through, especially after they've experienced or seen some pretty traumatic stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, as you can imagine, the average patrol officer just on a daily shift sees things that most people won't see in a lifetime, and they see that,
and they just hear about it on the news. It's that kind of thing,
right. And so these, the officers are daily absorbing these calls for service, and there's definitely a cumulative effect there to that. But not only, the day-to-day calls, but you have officers that work special assignments, such as crimes against children, homicides, our traffic unit who works fatality accidents on the interstate. And, these are all really can be very horrific visual scenes, not to mention everything else that comes along with it. And so these are some of the assignments that we may experience carry even more weight than some of the other, calls for service and things like that. So it puts an extra burden on those people who are assigned to those special units. And so we have to make sure that we're taking care of those people and that they're getting what they need and that they're taking care of themselves and are really realizing, hey, this might be some time for some self-care, a little extra time off, or whatever that might look like. We're there to kind of remind them of those things if they're not doing it for themselves.
Chuck, I don't know about you, but I've gotten to the point where, and you may judge me on this, I don't know, but it's the truth. I've gotten to where I don't even like to watch violent movies. Like I like give me the Andy Griffith Show, give me some Sanford and Son, give me Looney Tunes, any of it.
Sure.
I struggle to watch the news at night because I feel like I'm so inundated with this. And Daniel, I don't know about you, but
I do watch it every night, unfortunately.
Well, okay.
for different reasons.
Yeah,
but
right, absolutely. No, yeah, you've got special need to do it, so I understand that. But I just got to where I don't like to watch the news. We watched a movie the other night, and midway through it, I almost told my wife, I was like, we got to turn this off. I just can't watch it anymore. It's the weight of the world feels too heavy all the time. And that's a guy that just comes in and talks about the things that y'all are doing.
Some of our newest recruits sent over some photos recently. They're at the range. They're qualifying with a gun. The reason I bring it up, you can see the sheer joy in their face. They are so excited to have this new career. They are so excited that they've just passed their qualifications. Fast forward, and what will that officer look like 5 years from now without someone like Officer Moeller-Reed stepping in, trying to make sure that they're maintaining some level of self-care? Because I think you're spot on. All of us feel inundated. It doesn't matter whether we're in an election cycle or not. It doesn't matter if you're into college sports or high school sports or pro. You're going to go through artificial highs and lows based on what's happening in the world. It's going to impact you. And then fast forward into just your own personal life. We all have a boss. If the boss came in today and they're happy, well, then suddenly it's going to be a good day. If they came in upset, everybody's mood just sort of drops.
Yeah.
And you're, oh, boy,
Slide.
what? Let me stay out of the
Let me lean back in. It's like Homer Simpson when he goes back into the bushes.
Yes, absolutely. And so when you look at what we do as a profession, it's interesting that the average person doesn't stop and think about why, and that's where we need to stay. Why does that cop get so salty? Why does that officer get so grumpy? Why did that officer seem so gruff with me? Well, if you're answering the same question, you mentioned your son is now in college. Well, when you were in grade school, middle school, high school, he comes up to you and asks you the same question. About the fifth time that he asks you that same question.
Enough!
Right.
Listen. Write it down.
Right. Is your attitude towards him the same as it was the first time?
And you love him more than anything else on the earth.
Yeah.
Correct. And now put a police officer out on the side of the road with somebody who they've now been told, hey, Officer Moeller, I need you to go write tickets at this stop sign because some guy named Daniel complained that people keep running the stop sign in his subdivision.
That guy, he's causing problems
Sorry,
again.
Daniel. And so she's writing these tickets, and these people get so frustrated that, well, that officer seemed irritated. Well,
he probably was. She probably was.
She probably was, and it had nothing to do with you. And I know that you would love to think that this is some concierge level service, and that you're getting this amazing person at the Ritz-Carlton, but that's not how this
real
works.
life.
That's not real life. And when you look at what Jonnie is doing to try and protect the minds and hearts of these individuals, it's already hard enough to find someone willing to wear a badge and a gun.
That's right.
And it's hard
because of
enough
the
to find
demonization back to the media.
Sure. And then after you get that person, how are you going to keep them in that uniform without them burning out or becoming disenchanted? And that's where Jonnie comes in.
Well, let's talk about that, Jonnie, because there are long hours, the pay, that comes along with it. Is it increased a little bit? Probably, but is it deserved? Are the officers being paid for what they actually do and what they earn? I would say the answer is definitely not. It's dangerous. I mean, there's just a myriad of reasons that an officer, even after that big smiling face that Chuck talked about when they qualified and they're so proud of serving their community, after about 5 years of all the things that we just discussed, and then some of those long hours, the pay gaps, the extra jobs that they have to do on the side to make ends meet, it's hard to keep them on the force.
It is. It's hard to retain officers and keep officers healthy in that kind of environment. I mean, it's a constant struggle.
I'm sure it's just a battle all the time to help coach them through that, which is the reason you have the position you do, right?
Right. And it is. It's a constant battle. And everybody, even when they come to the job, everybody brings with them their own personal experiences, their own personal baggage, and then you get to the job and you have the stressors of the job on top of that.
And some of them are unexpected, I would imagine. People don't even realize what those stresses will be when they see them.
Right. They're totally unexpected. Something you think you might respond to is something that you don't respond to, and vice versa. So you have these unexpected things that you deal with as a person. You have your personal life, that things going on in your personal life. You come to work, you deal with the stressors of the job, and then God forbid you throw in a critical incident like an officer involved shooting or something like that, and then now your cup is boiling over at this point. And for us, that can be very very dangerous, because when we don't manage our stress, what that looks like, excessive force, just a myriad of things that can happen when we as officers don't manage our stress.
I just saw something written down, compassion fatigue, and I think that's what, Chuck, you were just talking about, right? The fact that these people came to work because they wanted to serve their community. Sure. And yet they get asked that same question 5 times, or they have to do something over and over and over again, and they want to be compassionate, and it's in their instinct to be compassionate. And then they probably give themselves a hard time when they're not. I remember, just like with the example that you brought up, Chuck, of my kid asking me the same thing. Mm-hmm. After I am short with him, then I beat myself up for 15 minutes after, going, why did I answer that way? That's not going to be helpful to him. It's not going to be helpful to the harmony of our family. And I would imagine, Jonnie, that those officers have that same type of stress, that same type of feeling when they react poorly.
Right, exactly. And if it doesn't come out with the public in, being rude to a citizen, then they take it home and they treat their kids that way. Or, they get home and the kids run and hide, because daddy's home or mommy's home and she's going to be in a bad mood because she just left work. And so those are the things that we want to try to prevent and teach officers how to transition from going from work mode to home mode. And there's a whole science behind it. And when you really get into like the functioning of the brain and the left brain and the right brain, we operate mostly doing this job in the left brain, in the logical side of the brain. And we are taught to detach and to compartmentalize so that we can answer those, horrible calls and make it through. But no one ever teaches us how to re-engage in the right side of our brain, the emotional side of our brain. And so officers get stuck in this weird place of detachment. And then when they go home to their families, they don't know how to re-engage and have that healthy, happy dialogue at home, which then ends up resulting in, higher divorce rates or alcoholism or other
Or even
unhealthy coping skills. Absolutely.
And that being the number one killer, talking about officer suicide, the number one killer of emergency responders because of these stresses that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Is there a certain department that you see more of a need? Like, for instance, warrant division. If that department's serving warrants, let's say, like for instance, we serve our warrants. Do you see a higher risk there,
or where is it,
or is it somewhere else?
So there are statistics that show the higher risk are for officers that have been on the job 20 years or more. It's in the 40-ish age range. So it's not the young guys coming on because they're still gung-ho and excited and they're in the honeymoon phase. But it's the guys and gals that have been around and have experienced the critical incidents and the cumulative stress of the career, and it just compounds over time.
Because I know serving warrants now is obviously way more dangerous than it was 5 years ago.
It
right?
is,
10 years ago.
absolutely.
So I know that's a huge one.
Yeah, and it depends on they're not so much specific job duties, but there are certain assignments that create more of, I think, a compassion fatigue than some other, such as the crimes against children and things like that.
I can't even wrap my head around that.
It's, yeah.
I really struggle with that, Chuck.
But even saying that, each one of us are wired so uniquely different, and that's the challenge for Jonnie. I might be totally fine with something that might but here's the rub. Tug and I are working together, and we both go out on the same call, and we both have different lived experiences, and we walk away from that call, and both of us are going to put on that fake smile and that fake face and act like, no, I'm fine. It's the rest of the world that needs help. That's why I'm here. I'm the one to solve the problems. She's looking for all the clues between both of us to say, what's different? I'll just pick on myself, why is Chuck acting different? And then, hey, Tug, you were working with him recently. Have you had any major calls? Is there something happening? Is there, do I need to worry? Should I go talk with him? Sometimes it's just, hey, come in and sit down and have a cup of coffee with me. And starting those dialogues, getting us to allow ourselves to be human. And that's her biggest challenge.
So how do you foster that then? If it's Chuck and I, we go on the same calls and we have different reactions and responses, which makes perfect sense to me. It's so clear. I don't know that had you said it, I would have ever put two and two together. Mm-hmm. But now that it has been said, it makes perfect sense to me. So how do you foster that relationship with your office and the things you do as a police wellness officer and the peer support coordinator? How do you foster that relationship so Chuck can go in if he needs it, or I can go in, or we can both go in and sit down and have a discussion about what we saw, what we had to do?
So it's one component of that is education, is we have to educate the officers from the very beginning of their career, from the moment that they walk through the door. We have to normalize them taking care of themselves. And then we have to, throughout their entire career, all the way to retirement, making sure that they understand the signs of stress, the symptoms of stress, and what that looks like, and how do they provide self-care to themselves. So it's the educational component of that, but it's also a lot of it has to do with building trust and fostering those relationships with people, and I joke with some of the guys at work, like my job is to talk to people now. Like I get to just go around and just talk to people and check in with them and see how they're doing. And if I talk to them enough, I can tell when something's off.
Yeah, just like anybody you have a relationship with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
We spend more time at work with our coworkers than we do our families.
No kidding.
So we know when something is not right, and that's where we have to step up and look out for each other and be our brother's keeper in that sense, and call each other out like, hey, are you okay? I'm here if you need to talk, and make ourselves available and a little bit vulnerable to having those conversations with each other. Instead of putting up the wall and being stoic and like everything's fine, I'm great, everything's fine, and the world's burning around us.
Goodness, yeah, I can totally see that. Do any of the officers ever feel like you're prying? Because it seems like to me, especially as a guy, if my wife asks me how my day was 2 or 3 times, I'll know that she's seeing something. But if I'm not in the mood to talk about it, I'm going to shut that conversation down. I'm fine. Everything's good.
100%.
Yeah, so yeah, right? So I just wonder, do officers have that same, you talk about the barrier, right? And sometimes they're not ready to talk about it. And you would know better than I, is there a time that you have to give it to let them get to that point where they're ready to talk about it? Or if you pick at them too much, do they feel like you're prying? I mean, there just seems to be a delicate balance there.
There is a very delicate balance. And that's where I think I benefit from having been around so long at the department, because I do have that experience of
you've been there and done everything that they're doing too.
Done it. Yeah. And so and like
I'm sure they respect that immensely. I'm sure
it does help. It helps with your street cred, you
Yeah,
know, because
absolutely.
you have been there, you've done it all, and it just helps to overcome those barriers. But absolutely, yes, there are some people, just being honest, that will never buy into the need for officer wellness and mental wellness and all that stuff, and that's okay. And I always tell them, if that ever changes, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here. And that's all I can do, is plant the seed and then hope that one day, you know, they circle back around and
and accept and realize, you know what, I'll liken it to football, Daniel, and you can tell me. I mean, this is really awesome, because we were talking about football, you know, at the beginning. I know you're a big baseball fan, but you know, we happen to be talking about football in the beginning of, before we even got here to record. It's like the people that are mad when hits get called as flags, right? They're making football soft. They're not, you know, and I'm guilty of that too. There's times when I see a flag come out and I'm like, come on, it's still football.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I see a little bit of that mentality in what you're talking about, when guys are like, no, I don't need that, or gals are like, no, I don't need that. This is you're making me look soft, or whatever it is that they interpret it as.
absolutely. And I was that person.
Okay.
I was
Really?
that person.
Okay.
I was that person for many years.
That's fascinating.
It really
to
is.
end up where you are, having been that person.
It is. I've come full circle, and it's pretty cool, actually. But
Yeah, it's terrific, but it's just surprising.
it is very surprising, because in a place where I was, many years ago when I was in detectives, and I spent 10 years in detectives working the worst of the worst, you know, and you see things that change you. As a person, you know, you just...
And not for the better, I'm sure.
Not for the better, you know, and so you have to really be conscious of that. And I went down a dark road of a place that I didn't want to be, and I was not a nice person at that moment, you know, with all of the stress that had compounded. And so I was the naysayer of, oh, suck it up, it'll be all right, you know. I remember going to, we had a call of a child that literally it was a shaken baby.
Oh, wow.
And we had just gone down to CHOA to talk to the neurosurgeon. And we came back, and the child was not going to make it. And we were discussing it among the detectives. And there was a patrol officer that was sitting in the room with us when we were talking about it. And I remember looking over, and there were tears coming down their face. And I remember, you know, like, what is wrong with you? If you can't handle this, suck it up, you know?
You got to go.
And shame on me. How dare I, you know? And I am ashamed of that, but I use that example.
Well, but that's a learning experience.
It
I think
is.
Sometimes we learn the most when things are the worst and the hardest. You don't learn
Absolutely.
anything when everything is smooth
When you
sailing.
succeed, right,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Dude, the world is your oyster, but when things are hard, that's when you actually build that ability to reflect on because that was going to be my next question. What helped you realize that the thing that you're doing now is needed, and your story is perfect and describes it so well.
Yeah. I mean, I got to a point where I looked up, and 10 years of my life had gone by, and I'm like, what do I have to show for this? I have a box of awards. That's great, but I literally
And a box of medicine.
in a box of medicine, absolutely.
Blood
my
pressure,
blood pressure.
Goodness.
I was.
Do you have any extra? I think I might need some. By the way, my doctor told me that.
I mean, literally, I was sitting in my desk one day and thought I was having a heart attack.
Yeah. Oh my.
And I walk
Goodness.
over to the fire department. They're like, "Oh, you got to go to the ER. Your blood pressure's through the roof," And I took 4 different blood pressure medications before I was able to get it under control.
Goodness.
I gained like 40 pounds. It just, it just not in a good place.
Stress is tough on you, man.
Stress is, it takes a toll physically, mentally. And I was that guy of suck it up until I realized if I'm suffering, and there's got to be other people that are suffering too.
Just recognizing it, though, I think is, Daniel, that's just having that wherewithal, being able to go, you know what, I'm not who I know I am, is really, really difficult to, first of all, recognize, but then act on.
Yeah.
I mean, to being able to act on that and say, I've been wrong this whole time is an amazing, it's why you're a great officer, because you have that ability. Most of us don't. And that's an amazing thing that you were able to do. And I have nothing but incredible respect for you being able to do that. Talking to Officer Jonnie Moeller-Reed, Police Wellness Officer and Peer Support Coordinator. Also in today, you've heard him before, it is Chuck McPhillamy, Marietta Police Department's PIO. All right, what's the last thing that we want to talk about? We'll edit here, but what's the last thing we want to focus on, because the last segment's so small? Is there anything that we've left out that y'all really want to get to?
You want to talk about the group that you formed, the peer support group? Do you want to talk about the wellness room? Do you want to talk about
you could probably tie
plans
both of
moving
those in.
forward?
Yeah, I think just maybe the overall
program
and how it, like how we break it down and like all the components of it that make it all important.
Okay.
And how it kind of fits together.
All right. When we come back on Back Your Blue with Daniel Madelon of A Second Chance Bail Bonds and A Second Chance Monitoring, we're going to talk about that police wellness officer position as well as the peer support coordinator, how all those puzzle pieces work together to improve the Marietta Police Department. Next on Back Your Blue on Extra 106.3.
Extra 106.3 and A Second Chance Bail Bonds are here to back your blue. Now back to the show on Atlanta's only conservative news and talk station, Extra 106.3.
Welcome back. Final segment of Back Your Blue with Daniel Madelon. He is the CEO of A Second Chance Bail Bonds and A Second Chance Monitoring. Great guest today, Daniel, with Officer Jonnie Moeller-Reed. And our second visit from Marietta Police Department PIO, Chuck McPhillamy. Thank you all both for being here. We just appreciate your time and your expertise in what you do. Let's talk about the puzzle pieces that make up your position and how they all work together. What are some of the things that you're doing in your new role to actually sit down with the men and women of the Marietta Police Department? Where do you want to begin?
I think the most critical component of that is peer support. Is just providing peer support to our officers, being there for them whenever they might experience something work-related or even personal life. Because, again, we're human, and so we tend to forget that we have a personal life, too, that we need to deal with.
Long hours are a real thing. You forget that you actually have a personal life.
Right, exactly.
Goodness.
And then the long hours create relationship issues, and it's just circular in nature. So I think the backbone of the program is peer support, and helping people understand the importance of being able to talk to somebody openly and freely, and talk to someone who understands
and not be
who's
judged
been
too,
there,
I'm sure,
and not
right?
be judged. Yeah, and what's pretty cool about it is, Georgia law has actually recognized how important it is for peer support and for officers to be able to talk to someone confidentially. So there's actually a clause in Georgia law that provides confidentiality between a peer support officer and someone that they're speaking with. So it's protected under Georgia law because it is that important. So peer support is a huge component, and then the family connection is another huge component. We want to provide and have resources for officers so that they can organically build their own support systems outside of work with other families and other first responder families. So we're going to be working on that component as well as bringing the families into it. And then finally, the final component is the educational component, is educating our officers from the beginning of their career on the stressors of the job and how that they can healthily cope with those stressors. and also providing that education to our supervisors as well, who are the first line in seeing the officers and how they respond to calls, and noticing the signs of stress in their folks that they're supervising, because that's important. If we can catch it early and have some intervention, then we can save careers and we can save lives.
Goodness.
So.
Yeah, I want to go back and ask you, maybe I think this probably plays a part in the health of officers, and that is eating right, getting enough sleep. I mean, working long hours.
Are you saying roller food and an energy drink isn't healthy? Because that's like my breakfast, lunch,
I would
and
never,
dinner
Chuck.
most
I would
shifts.
never suggest that. No, by no means. Not me. I love Waffle House too much, you know. But seriously though, you have roller foods, and you have energy drinks, and you have long hours, so you're not getting enough exercise or not getting enough sleep, and you're not eating healthy. How much does that play into what you're trying to build to make sure that those guys are doing, instead of acting like Chuck and going getting some roller food, you know? they go get some sort of, vegetable maybe. One at least.
It's actually it's huge, because as the body's under stress, it depletes the natural vitamins and minerals inside your body, and you don't absorb the nutrients like you need to. So I know a lot of our guys are really into fitness and eating clean and healthy and chicken and rice and all that stuff, but if you're under extreme stress, your body is still not absorbing those nutrients, and so it's making sure that you are taking extra precautions of the vitamins to, supplement for that, or sleep hygiene, because we have shift work, and so, or we work long hours and we don't sleep when normal people do.
I've not heard that ever before in my life. Sleep hygiene. What is that?
Sleep hygiene. So that's so, and this is something that I had to learn for myself, because I've always struggled with sleep. Okay. So it's basically shutting your phone off at least an hour before you go to bed.
I thought it was take a shower before you go to bed. I swear that's what I was thinking it was. Oh, so I'm way off base. Like, who's not taking a shower? Yeah.
Well, you'd be surprised.
Yeah, that's right.
Is there somewhere for them to go if something's happening, if you're a Marietta police officer and you're at work? Do you guys have a place for people to go, or
wellness room?
So we have a wellness room that we've had for about a year now, and it's a quiet room where you can go. There's a massage chair in there. You can dim the lights. You can listen to some.
Can you sign up to go? Do you have to be with the police department to go?
Field trip.
I'll sign up to go sit in the massage chair.
Come on over. Love it. But yeah, so you can listen to some nature spa sounds, some aromatherapy, sit in the massage chair and just relax and decompress. And I go in there, just whenever I'm feeling a little, just blah or whatever, tired, whatever, and just 15, 20 minutes in there, and you kind of feel recharged. Yeah. And so it's a nice place to go and relax your mind, to decompress.
Love it. That's something that y'all have only had for a year, and still you're so far advanced, back to where we started, ahead of so many other departments. What should other departments, like if there's an officer from another department's listening right now, what do you advise them? How do you get help for them? How do you help get them on the right path?
Oh, wow. While she's thinking, be intentional. Be intentional. There's so much about what Jonnie does and what the command staff does to be intentional about making it more than just a buzzword.
Sure.
It's a common phrase in probably every department, but where does the actual work start? Real quick, because I know time is limited. Jonnie did a gathering recently for a bunch of new hires that seemed hokey to me at first, because it's a paradigm shift. She brought in all of their families and said, come in and we're just going to order in pizza and we're going to hang out. I'm going to bring in people from every different group of all of those specialized units, and we're going to get a chance for you to ask questions, for the family to ask questions.
That's great.
That
sounds brilliant to me.
Unbelievable buy-in from those families. And so now you have built-in support in the families when that young officer, male or female, goes home, that didn't exist before. They couldn't even begin to relate before. She was opening the eyes of all of those outside support members.
Helping them understand what she already does.
Be intentional would be And Johnny, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step in, but I wanted to make sure we covered that.
No, it's so good.
Yeah,
because that's part of it.
It is, and
Or
it's
probably
it's,
the biggest part of it.
It's really teaching people how to do those things. It seems so simple, but when no one ever teaches you what does self-care look like, or what whatever it might be, you don't necessarily know what that means unless someone teaches you or shows you how to do that. And so it is very intentional in a lot of ways. The biggest thing I think is building support within a department. It's critical. You have to foster that culture that allows for that and allows people to be authentic and open about those kind of topics.
Love it. Thank you all so much for taking the time today. I'm sure there's 10,000 other things that we can do. I mean, we can get you back, Johnny, for a second visit. And we get Chuck back for his third. I mean, look, we could set up our whole playlist just on Chuck interviews by ourselves. It'd be so great talking to Officer Jonnie Moeller-Reed and Chuck McPhillipy, Marietta Police Department. Thank y'all for being here. Daniel, if it weren't for you, we wouldn't do the show and have these incredible conversations that no one else is having anywhere.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable,
it's
man.
Great.
Really,
it's all great stuff.
The stuff we cover on Back Your Blue.
This is an Extra 106.3 podcast. To hear more live and local content like this, tune into 106.3 FM or download the Extra 106.3 app.
Associated Credit Union's Prosper checking account earns more than 40 times the interest rate paid on the average checking account nationwide. That's more cha-ching in your checking account each month. With no minimum balance or monthly maintenance fee, this is the perfect checking account for adding more cha-ching each month. Associated Credit Union is here to help you live, bank, grow, and cha-ching. Certain terms and conditions apply. Learn more at acuonline.org/prosper checking. Federally insured by NCUA.
Atlanta Braves fans, how would you like to meet your all-star second baseman and World Series champion, Ozzie Albies? Well, now you can on Saturday, November 16th at PBR Battery Atlanta from noon to 2 p.m. Join us for an exclusive meet and greet where you can meet Ozzie, get an autograph, and snap a few selfies. Tickets are going fast and will sell out quickly, so get yours today at morethansports.com and click on the signings tab. That's morethansports.com and click on the signings tab. Don't miss your chance to meet Ozzie Albies Saturday, November 16th at PBR Battery Atlanta.
Why should you do your shopping at D. Geller & Son this holiday season? Because you don't want to end up like shouldn't have case number 674.
Okay, everyone, let's open our gifts. Honey, you go first.
Oh, perfume. You really shouldn't have.
It's in my throat.
It's in my eyes.
What? It's not that bad.
Shouldn't have gone with the perfume. This year, take the risk out of holiday shopping with a beautiful gift from D. Geller & Son. A breath of fresh air since 1939.